Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. I am Moody and in today's video we're going to do a sculpture of Sonic and Knuckles. So one of the first things you're going to want to do here is, one of the first things I did here was make sure that I had the proportions of the characters right together. So Knuckles is a little bit taller than Sonic, so that's one of the first things that I wanted to focus on because I wanted to, make sure that I had that juxtaposition of the two characters early on, so that I didn't have to mess around too much later on. And then after that we're just going to be adding simple shapes to sort of flesh out the forms, flesh out the base of this model, and make sure that everything kind of looks the right proportions and size for each of the two characters. So this mostly is going to be just laying out some simple parts, mostly cylinders and shapes like the cone, and just cutting out a few random shapes for the foot and things like that. So there's not an awful lot going on here. So we're going to go through this on both characters, and I'll jump back in with a little more when we get off this base mesh of the primitives even. So I'll leave it here for now and I'll jump back in a bit. So at this point I'd sculpted some sort of eyebrows on him to make him match, try and put the reference together that I was going to do, because I'm doing Sonic and Knuckles in their fighting positions here. So I decided against that because it's hard to sort of like sculpt around it and make sure that you've got the face, the underlying structure of the face looking good when you've already put such an extreme pose on it. So I sort of moved away from that, sculpted that out of the model, and then continue adding the spikes and then doing voxel remesh to add the spikes to the actual head. After this we do a little bit of work on the trainer just to get the basic shape of it, and then we're going to shuffle on over to do the same thing on Knuckles. So again, because Knuckles is a slightly larger character than Sonic, I copied the base of Sonic's head over because I like the proportions around the face, and then just scaled it up a little bit, and then we're going to remove everything else, like the spikes we just removed. We're going to cut the ears off in a little bit, and then we're going to just, like I said, we're going to continue through adding the same underlying sort of primitives to Knuckles as we had on Sonic. I mean, with a few minor changes, like the shoes are slightly different shape. The gloves, he doesn't have any fingers on or anything like that. I don't even add the spikes until later because they're just not really needed. Again, we'll just let this carry on for now because we're still just finishing up with the underlying structure of both these characters. And I think we move on to Sonic to sculpt him first. I'll jump back in when anything comes up, because for now it's just a lot of reorganizing in the hierarchy so that I can actually pose this guy. Okay, so now everything's organized in the hierarchy correctly. We're going to throw just a basic pose down on Sonic, because I don't waste too much time sort of posing the shoes, for example, because I know I'm going to sculpt it later and then duplicate it and pose it for the other side. So we're just laying down a rough, or as close to the finished pose as what I'm hoping to get, and then we're going to sculpt from there. So again, I'll jump back in when the sculpting starts. I think we're going to move over, and I can't remember if I go over and pose Knuckles before I start the whole sculpt or not, but you know, regardless, it's you know, basically just posing up the character here, and again, not wasting too much time on the basic stuff, just trying to get as much of the pose down as I possibly can, because there are adjustments later. I'll move the legs up and down and forwards and backwards a little bit as I sculpt. So yeah, I'll jump back in when we actually get to the sculpting. So I do actually spend a decent amount of time posing these guys and making sure that the pose looks right using the base primitives. I don't want to undersell how important it is to get the base pose right, but yeah, it's just a quick interjection there, because I didn't want to sell it short and just be like, oh, you know, buzz through this part, it's not important. It really is. So you know, I do spend a fair amount of time getting the poses together and making sure that they're going to work with as few changes as possible later on down the line. I mean, like I said, I do make adjustments, but I want to keep them to a minimum. So yeah, okay, I'll jump back in again when we move off of Knuckles, because once this guy's posed up, I think we're going to go ahead and start sculpting Sonic. So yeah, just checking how the pose is going to work, because this is although they're two separate sculptures, it's going to be kind of the same scene. If I ever get around to 3D printing these guys are going to be printed together and kept as a set. That's how it works in my mind anyway. So I was just quickly checking how the poses work together before, you know, popping Sonic or Knuckles, whoever it was I moved, back to their original position so that I can sculpt them a little easier. Okay, so like I said, some of the tweaks and some of the small changes that I'm making based on the pose, and yeah, the sculpting will just continue from here. So for an example, you know, the spikes on the back of his head were getting in the way of his arm, because of the nature of the pose that I've got him in. So you know, they had to be moved and adjusted and have a little bit of the mass sort of like sculpted and moved out of the way. But yeah, we'll go ahead and very soon and start a kind of, it's not really like it's got some sort of anatomy on it, because you know, he's obviously a humanoid character even though he's an alien hedgehog. So I did put some recognizable anatomy on him, and we'll move on to actually sculpting some of that in, I think, yeah, about now. So marking the center line, putting in some of the pectoral muscles and stuff around the shoulders, just recognizable landmarks, that would sort of indicate that this guy's a bipedal creature. So yeah, we'll let this keep going for now because it's a pretty basic sculpt. I mean, it looks good. I don't want to undersell it. It looks good, but I'm only throwing down what needs to be sort of visible to, sell it to your brain as a viewer, right? Because a lot of this is going to be, I'm going to sculpt some fur texture over the top of this, so a lot of this is probably going to be hidden by that anyway. But it's just it's just good practice because it means that you'll know the pose works. Like, for example, if his arm was twisted back too far and you just didn't worry about adding any type of anatomy to it, you might not notice that his arm's twisted back too far, and it might start to look weird later on down the line. And later on down the line, it's actually a lot harder to change that. So, just throwing down a basic anatomy sculpt as you're going along never hurt anybody. So, again, for now, most of this is just stuff that we've seen before, sculpting the arms and some of the muscle anatomy around the arms. I don't think I go too crazy on it because, like I said, a lot of it's going to be hidden anyway. So we'll let this continue to play out with some music playing in the background, and hopefully you find it helpful and enjoyable to watch. So I do end up throwing down a base sculpt on the legs before I actually merge them to the body. I just think it's a little bit easier to work on the mass of each leg individually. Then like if I have to do any tweaks to the inside of his thigh, for example, it's not going to start moving around the mesh that it's attached to, i.e. like around his belly. So I do a base sculpt on the legs before I actually end up attaching them, and it also gives me a chance to tweak the position of the rear leg. This is something I remember doing because it just looked funny from a few angles when I rotated around it, and it turns out that the legs were just slightly off. Like the fact that his rear leg was too far back or too far forward, I forget which one, made it feel like his hips were over rotating, and it just felt a little off. So we end up tweaking that in a little bit, and this is another good opportunity here that I use to just duplicate the leg that I've already sculpted, saving a little bit of time. Not an awful lot, but time is time, and I saved some. So I duplicated the leg over and tweaked it from the original sculpt I made of his right leg. I don't think it's cheating. So it was after that initial merge I realised the leg was in a weird position, like there wasn't enough meat or bone or any even just mesh in between the rear leg and his body, and it made it look like it was stretched out, almost falling off of his body. So I adjusted that, brought it a little closer, and again, keeping the legs separate, it was a good opportunity for me to see that. If I'd have just merged the whole thing earlier and then sculpted the upper body anatomy, I would have been stuck with those leg positions, and I've had to have fixed it using masks and stuff, and that is annoying and not very clean if you do it wrong. So move on to sculpting the gloves for now. Again, these are simplified gloves. These are simplified hands because he's a cartoon character who's got very oversized hands. So these are very simplified. I didn't throw too much time at this particular part of the sculpt. It looks good still. I spend a little bit of time on it, moving the weight around, like here for example, where he's contacted with the floor and stuff. But I don't go overboard. They're simplified cartoony gloves, so just went with what we ended up with, and you'll see in just a moment. I think they looked good. Okay, finally broken symmetry, so posed up the face a little to make him look a bit more serious about the fight with Knuckles. I'm imagining this is Sonic 2, So the first time they meet, they end up fighting quite a bit, and some cool stuff happens in the movie. So yeah, I'm just, like I said, breaking symmetry a little more on the face there now. We're going to sculpt up his trainers now. I always find these types of things a little tricky. Getting the initial trainer shape down, I always just find it a little tricky, and although it doesn't really show in the time lapse here, I did spend a bit of time sort of trying to figure out these trainers, and although I've sculpted them before, there's no one sculpture is ever really the same as another. So I had to sort of just get the idea into my head, sort of just work around. Just keep working on the trainer in the sense that, finding the shape and finding some random high and low spots that just made the trainer feel weird and stuff like that. And it's just a back and forth thing, you'll sculpt it up to a certain degree, spin around it and have a look and be like, why does it freaking look weird? What the hell's wrong with this thing? And then, you spend a bit of time looking around it again and slowly start to figure it out. And it's just a whole thing with the back and forward of sculpting something that I'm not a big trainer guy, I don't spend a lot of time looking at shoes. So it's just, I don't know, it's just a little bit tricky at the start, but it starts to come together. Once you get the base shape in there, the rest of it all sort of becomes a little easier, because you're on the, like I said a little earlier, having a decent base puts you in a good position to move forward anyway. So once I had a decent base and started cutting the shapes out, the trainer really just started to come together. So okay, so throwing on the last few touches for the trainers, like the tags underneath the Velcro at the front, and I throw the tag on the back, and then I think we'll merge this whole, well, no, we won't merge it, we'll join it, and then we'll duplicate it and flip it over and do a quick sort of repose on it before we move off and start adding some more detail to the rest of it. I think, we're going to do the socks, and then we're going to move on to adding the fur and just doing a lot of the cleanup from the sculpt that we've done and duplicating of the trainers and the gloves and stuff like that. So I'll jump back in when we get onto that. there was a decent amount of cleanup to be done on that initial, on the bent piece of mesh that I got there. So in the end, rather than fight against it, I decided to just, redraw the shadows in and extract that mesh for a second time, so it was already roughly in the position of the bent trainer. It just made a lot more sense than fighting a really thin piece of geometry back into position, because as you saw, the more and more I smoothed it out and messed around with it, the more and more damage the mesh was getting, and there were holes appearing and stuff like that. So there's a reasonable amount of cleanup that had to go into this trainer, but it's nothing we haven't seen before. So yeah, we'll oh, here we go. Yeah, so this is where we start to add the sort of fur texture on Sonic. I tried a different fur texture to what I normally use, just to see how it looked, and it felt a bit too repetitive. The smaller one, although again I see that it is the same stamp, it doesn't feel as egregiously repetitive, because there's a big sort of fur shaped piece in the middle of the other stamp that I was using, and it just became like egregiously visible that it was a duplicated texture, and this just seems to hide that fact a little better with this softer, smaller, more spread out and even texture that I was throwing down on him here. So I think we're just going to go over the rest of him with this, do a few tweaks here and there, and then I'll jump back on in a minute when we actually add his sort of quills, where his energy sort of glows from. So we'll let this play out and I'll jump back in when we get to that. Okay, so I actually lost too much of the detail there, so I go back over it again just to do a quick once over to add some of that detail back in, and I think it comes out okay. Something to be aware of when you're sculpting, guys. If you're going to decimate or smooth something out, or try and reduce the poly, or try and reduce the vertex count yourself, just be mindful of what you're doing, because like I said, I just destroyed most of the texture that I'd actually added to him there by trying to reduce the poly count. Okay, so for the quills, what I end up doing is just using the tube tool. I make it into a small sort of spike, and then just keep duplicating it over. I actually also am mindful to make sure that there's a low, quite reasonably low poly count on the quills, because there's going to be a lot of them. And it's very, very quickly, your poly count and your seam vertex count climbs very quickly when you end up duplicating it a few times, making half of the spike covered in quills, duplicating that, then duplicating it again to cover the other like 5 quills that he's got on his head, and that vertex count comes up very, very quickly. So I'm mindful to make sure that they are lower, as low as I can bear to look at without them just looking janky and horrible, and then duplicate and go from there. The seam count does climb quite high, so I end up actually doing a decimation on some of the quills just to bring them down a little further, and it works quite nicely. If you switch on smooth surface, it ends up actually working quite nicely, and it reduces the seam quite a lot. So yeah, we'll let this play out while I'm adding the quills and testing the glow effect on them, and I'll jump back in if anything interesting comes up. I can't remember if I sculpt the eyes yet or if I come back to those, but I'll jump in and talk about it if I feel like I need to. Okay, so yeah, we do sculpt the eyes now. Again, very simple stuff. sphere, make sure it's in the right place, make sure it fills the eyeball, cut out a shape using the mesh sort of extraction. Well, it's more like a boolean, and then sort of add the pupil in the middle of that. What I end up doing for the glow effect on the eyes is I duplicate the actual eyeball, cut away a lot of the actual white area of the eye, and then set it to glow the same way I did with the Quills by, you know, having it set to always unlit and then changing some of the render settings. So we're going to go ahead and start sculpting Knuckles now, and it's going to be a lot of the same, just getting the actual sculpt of the head down, noticing the subtle differences between him and Sonic, like his snout being ever so slightly more pointy, and his actual forehead being sort of lower and longer, a bit more, because he's a brute, he's probably got that slightly more caveman style skull underneath. So yeah, you know, again, just a lot of the same stuff here, guys. We're just going to go through, add some basic anatomy, and then I'll jump in when anything interesting comes up from there, guys. The teeth that I pulled in are actually pulled from Nomad's own mesh that it has available to you in the menus there. So I pulled in a head into a new scene quite a while ago, removed everything and left just the teeth there, so that I had a set of gnashers to you know, mess around with and pose in scenes and stuff like that. And you know, guys, I can sculpt a set of teeth, but why would I when a perfectly good set exists within inside of Nomad, you know? If it's something you want to see, if you want to see me sculpt a set of teeth, put a comment down, and you know, maybe it's something I'll get to in the end. But I don't see the need when it's clear that I'm able to do it, and just in order to save time, I can just drag them in. So I don't really see the need to keep resculpting something like teeth. That's exact reason is why I made an eyeball that I can just pop into other scenes and change the colour of it, you know, because I don't want to keep sculpting the same thing over and over, especially when it's just a ball or a set of like teeth, you know, which is, I mean, I digress. It's something that I don't want to keep sculpting over and over, so yeah, I pulled those in. I don't think it's cheating, so if you want to see me sculpt a set of teeth, if there's anyone out there that would find that helpful, pop it in the comments and I'll get to it at some point. This is what I was talking about with the eyes. I duplicate the eyeball, set it the same, give it the same settings that I have on the Quills, and then just do a sort of like a splash effect type sculpt just to fill the for some of the areas. I do a basic paint on his eyeballs a little later, but for the most part you don't see it because his eyes both their eyes are glowing quite bright. So you know, I don't even think you can see it in some of the renders that I've taken and some of the footage that I'm going to play at the end. So I'm not too concerned about it. But yeah, I do a basic paint over of the eyeballs just to fill that space. You know, even like I said, even though you can't really see it because of the amount of glow that's coming from his eyeballs from their power up, you know. Okay, so here we're going to throw some basic shapes down for what I want the gloves to look like and feel like. I think I sculpted this glove up pretty far, maybe even finish the actual sculpt on this thing before I come off of it, because I just want to get the glove done and duplicate it over to the other side. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, but as far as I can remember, I sculpted this glove almost to completion before I duplicate it over. And we'll do a paint of it all later. We do a paint over of the whole thing a bit later, so... Okay, so pretty happy with the gloves. We're going to go ahead and do a basic sculpt of Knuckles' shoes. Excuse me. The one thing I will say about these shoes here that we're sculpting right now, I don't actually sculpt in the grip on the shoes or even on Sonic's trainers until later on. That's something we come back and do later because, just be honest, I just wanted to not be sculpting shoes. So I get them to the point where I feel happy with them. Happy enough to move on at least, and then we'll come back later and we'll add the tread to the bottom of the shoes later. Just because it's done sculpting shoes and trainers at this point, I just want to actually get on with sculpting the character. Okay, so we're going to add the zip to the outside of his shoes here, and it's the same thing we do every time we make a zip, guys. We make the shape of one of the zip teeth, and we add it to a curve tool from inside the layers menu, layers options up there. And then once you've done that, you can see the menu appearing at the bottom there. You can, set the count, set the distance and things like that, and once you've got that, the other thing you can do is actually select one of the meshes, one of the teeth, scale it up and down there to make sure that it feels good in the scene. So yeah, basically you're just playing with the settings for the count and the size and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really easy once you get the hang of it, guys. And then we'll finally add the zipper and the dangly pulley thing on the side before we join it all together. Do not merge, because you won't be able to separate it again. So we use the join function so that we're able to separate it and still sculpt individual pieces of the trainer. Like here, for example, the sock, his actual sock covering the top of his boot, needed to be resculpted. Had that been merged, this would have been a nightmare. So yeah, keep control of as much of the sculpt as you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. One mistake I made here, well, it's not really a mistake, it's just unavoidable. Because I joined everything in order to mirror it, the teeth on the curve there that I had, they ended up baking, so I have to now move each individual zipper, but it's not a massive deal. It's something that's easily dealt with, as you can see. But yeah, like I said, just remember, keep as much of the sculpt in your control as you possibly can before you do any kind of like final merges and stuff, because like I said, sculpting this second boot would have been a nightmare had I merged this thing. So yeah, just try and think ahead and keep control of what you're doing. So again, the same here. I'm not going to keep redoing things if I already have something that's close to what I need. So I just duplicated the Quills from Sonic and then dragged them over into Knuckles hierarchy and did a slight repose on each of the individual Quills. So one of the problems with doing it this way is you no longer have control over the curve because you've had to join it and duplicate it and mirror it and do all of this sort of jazz. But again, it's not a massive deal. You can use the mask function and move individual pieces with the rest of the group masked off. So again, here we're now going to go ahead and add the fur texture to Knuckles. We're going to follow it from his nose across around his face, like I think most animals kind of grow from their nose and mouth area around and away from their face. And then we take it all the way down around the quills and around the rest of the body. It's pretty much the same as what we did with Sonic, but just following the shape of knuckle spikes round and down underneath his head rather than to the back. So yeah, just try and keep it random, guys, without breaking the flow. Try and keep it as random as you can, because that will help, sell that it's actual random fur rather than a duplicated over texture, Okay, so adding the electricity. Again, we've done this in a few other videos. It's the same effect that I've got on his quill, which is, like I said, you know, setting it to always unlit, going into the render settings up the top there, setting it to, I think it's additive, changing the opacity so that it's not too see-through, and then playing with the bloom settings under the render settings, under the quality settings there. So yeah, crank the bloom up a little bit and it should start to glow a little bit like electricity or a lightsaber. You know, you can get either effect from it. I have done a video where I sculpted a Sith Lord and sculpted a lightsaber, a red lightsaber and a sort of bluey green lightsaber, and you know, they looked pretty cool, and it's basically the same effect. So it's pretty easy to achieve once you've done it a couple of times. So you know, if you want to maybe a short tutorial quickly on how to do that, maybe I can throw that together. It shouldn't take too long. But you'll have to engage with the video and let me know in the comments, guys. Otherwise, I'm just going to sculpt things that I like. Okay, so we're going to make the shapes for the tread on the bottom of Knuckles' shoes. We've just done Sonic's. They were pretty easy. It's just a stamp tool to match the print of the trainers that he wears, which he wears, which I believe are Pumas, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, we're going to basically make the shape that we want to cut out of Knuckles' shoes for his tread here, and then just do a like a Boolean function and remove the excess mesh from the underside of the shoe. It's nothing too crazy. Pretty straightforward stuff, really, guys. If you want to see how I do this, which I'm sure most people know how to do it, you want to maybe see me make a shoe at a slower pace, you know, again, engage with the video, give me some ideas for tutorial stuff to do, and yeah, I'll get on it as soon as I can. So we're going to add some electricity, like a power up to the Knuckles sculpt, and then I'm not really sure what we get onto after that. I'm pretty sure we go onto the painting, but I can't really remember, so we'll see when we get there. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we move on to the painting after this. Ah, no, we make some cracks in the ground, like Knuckles has punched the floor, which I just thought was a kind of cool effect. But again, it's very simple. We cut out a shape, trim it, and we use the split tool just to split it into random shapes. Then we rotate them up and out just to make it look like the floor's cracked. I didn't go too crazy on it, you know, it just looks fun, so I added something like this. Looks good though. Okay, so moving on to the painting. I will say about the painting is that finding the right colours inside of Nomad, or colours that felt right, was a bit tricky at the very start. It doesn't look like I spent an awful lot of time doing it, but you can see me flicking back between Sonic and Knuckles to get the right sort of shades of red and blue. I don't know if it was me or user error, but it just felt like a bit tricky. I had to do a reasonable amount of back and forward there. And I changed the colour of the sort of like white fur, the lighter fur in his mouth and in his ears in a little while, because it starts, once I sort of play with some of the render settings, it starts to feel a bit orange. So I have to go back in and change that up in a little bit, but it doesn't take long to get the base colours in. And then we're just going to move on to adding some sort of like wear and tear and dirt and just roughage to their gloves and shoes and stuff like that. And we'll sculpt up the base a little as well. So there we go, just a very basic dirt pass over the gloves just to make them feel a bit worn, because otherwise everything's a little bit too pristine. And this is basically what we're going to do over all of their items of clothing, and considering they're only wearing gloves and shoes, we don't really spend an awful lot of time doing it. I mean, it ends up looking quite good, but it's not something that I spent an awful lot of time on. And again, this is all done on my S8 Ultra. I didn't actually move over to the PC for any of this because I didn't really feel like it was necessary, and it's just testament really to how well optimized Nomad is, because this scene went up to like nearly 5 million points at some stages, and it didn't really give me too much trouble. When I had the effects on and I was trying to paint with some of the effects on just to get a feel for how it would look, it lagged a tiny bit, but it wasn't anything to write home about, or anything to even really slow me down or impede what I was doing. So yeah, it's kind of just testament to how well optimized this little program really is. I mean, kudos to the creators and sorry, to the creator and the dev. I think he's a great guy. Really impressed with this so far, and I'm hoping that it just keeps getting better and better. But yeah, it's all done on the S8 Ultra. Last few tweaks on the poses and the positions of the characters. I do tweak the colour of the road markings, and just because they felt a bit orange again, like it's just a little bit of a misfire with the colours that I was laying down, but you know, easy to fix, easy to repair. And yeah, final dirt passes around Sonic, and then I think we're going to light this guy. The lighting's a very quick thing. I don't spend a lot of time doing it. Again, for most of my lighting setups, I just use a 3-point light setup, which is the point light, you know, showing the detail at the front where you really focus on for the sculpture. A rim light behind just to sort of pop the characters off the background, so they've got like a light edge around their sort of side that's lit by the rim light, and then a fill light usually just to bring in some of the shadows, bring some of the shadows up so that we're not looking at really dark shadows. I didn't really use a fill light in this one because what I ended up doing was putting a point light underneath each of the characters to make it feel like their energy was emanating from there, and that's where the electricity is coming from, that they're sort of like sparking out of them, you know. So didn't really need a fill light, so it's not so much a 3-point light setup as it is maybe a 2 or a 4-point light setup, I guess. I mean, I couldn't really tell you, but yeah, it's really simple lighting, guys. Usually it's a point light and at the very least a rim light. Just adding a point light underneath to sort of brighten up the underside of the characters, lift them off the background and off their bases a little, you know, and make them pop a little bit more. Excuse me. And then I think we're done. Yeah, here we go. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you found it helpful. If you've got any questions for me, then pop them in the comments below. And yeah, I mean, like and subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram now. I'm probably going to make a X account soon, just so you know I've got one. And yeah, I hope you guys found it helpful. If you want me to do anything or talk about anything else or do a tutorial on anything, please leave it in the comments and I will get around to it as soon as I possibly can. So thank you very much for watching. Thank everyone for supporting me so far. And yeah, happy sculpting, everybody.